Happy day students. Today we are going to read about Geography chapter 1, Resource and Development, class 10, Social Science. Before we go into the depth of the chapter, we need to understand what is a resource. For example, if you're walking down by a road and you find a piece of rock which is of no value to you or to anyone else, can that be called as a resource? Definitely you will say no ma'am. Some purpose it has to serve. Either you have to use it as a paperweight or you want to use it to grind something. So that means some utility, some usable value should be there. Then only we call it a resource. So now let us try to figure out what features a thing has need to have to be called as a resource. Okay, it has to be available in the environment. If it's somewhere on the other planet, it's of no use to us. It has to be available here in our environment. Then it must be able to satisfy our needs provided. Okay, it has to whatever need we require, whether we require to extract a mineral, or whether we used to use it as a paperweight, or we used to grind it something else, some need it has to satisfy. Then technologically accessible, that means whatever technology is available at this time, that should be able to improve this thing or be able to change the thing into resource. And economically feasible, that means the money spent in changing this particular thing into a resource should not be exorbitantly high. If it is too much than the service it is providing us, then there is no point in changing that thing into resource. Okay, and culturally acceptable, then only you can term it as a resource. That means that society has to accept it. If it doesn't, there's no point in calling it a resource or changing the thing into a resource. So now basically we know what is meant by a resource. Okay, and we know that a thing can be converted into a resource. Now the question will be, who plays an important role in converting this thing into resource? Okay, let me take a marker. Okay, so now we need to understand interdependent relationship between nature, technology and institutions. Okay, that means what? The process of transforming of things available in our environment involves a sort of a depending relationship between what all who are dependent on each other. Nature, okay, let me take another marker. So nature, human being and technology. Human beings and technology, they are interdependent on each other. Human beings interact with nature through technology. They create various institutions like the industries and the other things to accelerate this economic development by converting things into resources. So basically you need to understand that in order to make a thing into resource, human beings interact with nature and technology. Here we see a flow chart, okay, classification of resources based on how much they are available in our environment. Things that can again be recycled by itself or renew itself, and things that cannot renew itself. So as the name indicates, we have got renewable resources. Let me take a marker. So basically we have got renewable resources and non-renewable resources. So by this time, since you are in 10th standard, you would be slightly aware of difference between renewable and non-renewable. Renewable resources are, in simple words to say, that are always available. They never get exhausted. Okay, they're always available and you can use them unlimitedly as long as you don't hurt the nature, like the solar energy, air, wind, water, tides flowing. All these are always available, and even they replenish themselves. You might say that plants, soil and water, they get exhausted. Yes, though they get exhausted, they are renewable, because the rate at which we are using, a point of time can come when they will be completely absent. That is why we say that sometimes we say it's getting over, it's getting exhausted, water shortage is there. So we say that, but basically they can be categorized under renewable. Non-renewable resources, they take millions of years to form, and once you use it, they cannot replenish themselves and they are over, they are done with it. You will not be having them with you anymore. Those are non-renewable resources. In this chapter you see me using number of flow charts here, because it is easier to understand this chapter with the help of flow charts parts rather than content that is written. So now we have in the previous slide classified the resources based on their renewability. So now we are going to classify the resources based on the ownership. Let me take a marker again. So now we are going to classify the resources based on ownership. So based on ownership, again that means who owns it is the question here. In this we have got individual resources, we have got community owned resources, and we have got international resources. Yet there is another category which is called the national resources, which I will be explaining. Now let us go to the first one, which is individual resources. These are owned, as it clearly says, these are owned privately by individuals. Many farmers own lands, okay, which is given to them, and your parents might be having houses and lands in the villages. All these belong to you. Okay, in many villages people own lands. Urban people also own plots, houses and other property. So all these are owned by people, individual, therefore they come under individual resources. Community owned resources, that means the entire community owns a particular resource. By this time you must understand that in your apartments, if you have got a playground, then it's a community owned resource. You don't own it, but your entire apartments, that community owns it. Okay, they're accessible to all the members within your flats, within your association. In simple words to tell, for example, here they have given you public parks, picnic spots, playgrounds in urban areas. These are all community owned resources. Now, as I have told here, the slide is showing international resources. That means what? National resources are there. You need to understand, though I did not show it on the slide, that all the resources that are present within a country, that means individual resources, let it be, or community owned resources, let it be, both belong to national resources. That means what? Technically all resources belong to the nation. The country has legal powers to acquire even private property for public good. So what do you mean by that? That means, for example, if you are owning a patch of land somewhere in rural area, it is your own land. That means what? I'm talking about individual resource. It is your land. It is in rural area. Now the government has decided to lay a road. Now your patch of land is coming in the path where the roadway is to be laid. Then the government can approach you and ask you to sell your land to the government. Of course, the price that they pay is going to be low. It won't be high. If you refuse to sell your land to the government because they want to lay a road, by force they can acquire it. You cannot stop it, though it belongs to you, because that road serves the entire society. It is for a common good, for a bigger cause. So basically, what are national resources? Individual resources and community owned resources in a country, all of them belong to the nation. Basically, they belong. So that means your house is also national resource only. Keep that in mind. So now next we are going to go to international resources. As the name indicates, international means outside the country. These are they are under certain laws in order to use this. Okay, international institutions will be there which regulate some resources. For example, if you take the oceanic resources, beyond 200 kilometers of exclusive economic zone belongs to open ocean, and no individual community can utilize this without the concurrence of the international institutions. So basically, these are the classification of resources on the basis of ownership. So another flow chart has come up here. Now we are classifying the resources based on their origin. Okay, so as you already know, abiotic, biotic, the name itself indicates biotic means what? It has got life. Okay, here let me take marker. Biotic means what? It has got life. It is got from biosphere. Okay, abiotic resources means what? They are non-living, like rocks, metals come under abiotic resources. Okay, now classification of resources on the basis of status of development. We have got potential resources, we have got developed resources, we have got stock, and we have got reserves. So now let us go one by one. Okay, first we are going to go to potential resources. Potential resources, you hear many people saying that child has got lot of potential, Means what? This lot of talent inside the child, but it is not yet utilized. That is meant by something that is potential. Means what? It is present, but it is not utilized. Therefore, resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized come under potential resources. That means they are present in a particular area, but you are not using it. Okay, there can be various reasons. Some can be political reasons, some can be maybe technological, lack of technology. There can be various reasons why that resource, though it is present, you're still not using it. For example, in your textbook, they have mentioned the example of the western parts of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat. They have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy. Though solar energy, we are utilizing it, no doubt about it, but it is not to its maximum potential. You can utilize it more. So potential resources means resources are present, but we are not utilizing it. Now, in contrary, if you take developed resources, that means resources are present, the quantity and quality is determined, technology is present, and we are using it. So, potential resources, they are present, but we are not using it. Okay, maybe the quality and quantity, we are not sure of potential resources, but developed resources, the quantity, quality is known, and we have got technology and we are using these resources, then they are called as developed resources. Now, let us move on to stock. Okay, now materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to access these. Okay, that means what? Resources, they can satisfy us, we know that, but we do not have the technology, technical know-how to put it into use. That comes under stock. Clear? Now let us move on to reserves. Reserves are subset of stock, okay, which they can be put into use with the help of existing technological know-how, but their use has not been started. That means we have got technology, we have got resources, but right now we are not using it because right now we don't require it. Maybe in future when we require it, we will use those resources. Then those are called as reserves. Those are called as reserves. Now we know what do you mean by a resource, and we can even classify resources into various categories based on few criteria. Now the next question is development of resources. Do we need to develop these resources? Now if I ask you a question, are resources are a free gift of nature? If I ask you, are resources a free gift of nature? Immediately the answer that might come to you is yes, they are free gift of nature. No, you are wrong. Resources are not free gift of nature. Only things are present in nature. It is only human intellect that develops these things into resources. That means what? Resources are not a free gift of nature, but we have been thinking they are a free gift of nature, and human beings used them indiscriminately, and this had led to various problems. What are the problems that we have faced? First is depletion of resources. The quantity that is present is getting reduced, and certain exhaustible non-renewable resources take millions of years to form, like the fossil fuels. Once it gets over, then scarcity of resources will take place. Sometimes overusage also can lead to ecological problems. Overusage of fossil fuels can lead to pollution. Unequal distribution is also happening. What is happening? Accumulation of resources in few hands, which in turn divides the society into two segments, haves and have nots. One, somebody has more of resources, somebody has less of resources. So haves and have nots, and whoever is having exploitation, what they require more than that, they are using resources. In simple words, maybe if, with one brick the work can happen, they are using 2 to 3 bricks. So that is called exploitation. Okay, these are the problems that we are facing because of indiscriminate usage of resources. Therefore, there is utmost need for development of resources. So basically, if you are asked to write a 3-mark question, you can summarize the need for development of resources in the following way. Okay, what are we facing? Because of overusage, we are facing depletion of resources, accumulation of resources is taking place, and indiscriminate exploitation of resources has led to global and ecological crisis. Hence, we require to develop resources. That should be your answer. So now we will move on to resource planning. As we have discussed before, over exploitation is happening, over usage is happening, accumulation in wrong hands is happening. Therefore, the need has come for us to plan. Resource planning is required. Okay, let me underline. So resource planning is required. Now, why resource planning? In simple words, it's a widely accepted strategy for judicious use of resources. Nobody is telling you to stop using resources. If you stop using resources, development will not take place. So you need to use resources, but make it a point to see that it is judicious usage of resources. Okay, especially for a country like India, which has got enormous diversity in the availability of resources. We are telling India has got enormous diversity in the availability of resources. Okay, there are regions which are rich in certain types of resources but are deficient in some other resource. One particular area might have too much of one resource and nothing at all of another resource. There are some regions which can be considered self-sufficient in terms of availability of resources, but the regions have acute shortage of some other vital resource. So for example, if you want to go into it, the states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh are rich in minerals and coal deposits. Arunachal Pradesh has abundance of water resource but lacks in infrastructural development. That means one resource is present but the infrastructural resource is not present. For example, even if you take the state of Rajasthan, it's well endowed with solar energy, wind energy, as I told before, but lacks in water resources. Okay, and the cold desert of Ladakh is relatively isolated from the rest of the world. It has it is very rich cultural heritage but is deficient in other infrastructure. So in such a situation where some resources are in excess in one area and lack in or in shortage in another area, resource planning becomes very important. Resource planning is very important. The availability of resource is a necessity condition for development of any region. But just because resources are available does not mean that any country can develop. You should be able to put that resource into the right usage and judiciously. Only then that resource planning can be complete. Okay. Now we will move on to the next heading, conservation of resources. Again, as I told, conservation does not mean that you should not use the resources. Use the resources, but judiciously you have to use it in such a way that you are using it in the present and also saving some for the future. That is called as conservation. Resources are vital for any developmental activity, but irrational consumption and overutilization of resources may lead to many problems, environmental problems, socio-economic problems. So in order to overcome this, we need to plan our resources and we need to keep in mind that we need to conserve our resources. Gandhiji was very apt in voicing his concern. He said that there is enough for everybody's need. So what you need, you can use and everything is available. But to satisfy your greed, then resources will be shortage. As Gandhiji said, okay, if you are very greedy, then we are going to get a shortage of resources. He placed the greedy and selfish individuals and exploitative nature of modern technology as a root cause of resource depletion at global level. Okay, so basically he's telling need, fine. Need means you have resources, but greed means no, resources shortage will be there. Now this slide talks about land use patterns in India. Okay, the use of land is determined both by physical factors such as the topography, climate and soil types, as well as human factors such as what is the amount of population that is present here. Do they have technological know-how? What are the cultures and the cultural background of that particular place where this land is present? Okay, the total geographical area of India is land area is 3.28 million square kilometers as it is given here. Okay, land however the availability is only 93% of total area because the land use reporting for most of the northeast states except Assam has not been done closely. So though we know total geographical area of India is 3.28 million square kilometers, land use data, however, we don't have exact number. Moreover, some areas of Jammu Kashmir are occupied by, our neighboring countries who are really not very friendly with us. It is occupied by them. So how it is used, how that land is used, we don't exactly have the details. So some of the detail which we have, has been presented in the form of points in this particular slide and in the form of a graph. So now we move on to the next one, causes of land degradation. We need to remember that we have shared our land with the past generation, and we also have to share our land with the future generation. And we also have to keep in mind that the resources and the land which we have now is not inherited from our ancestors, but it is borrowed from our future generation. So we need to see that it has to be preserved carefully. In order to preserve it carefully, we need to know how land is being degraded, how it is being exploited. If we know what is happening, then you can plan what should be done and what should not be done. Okay, here you see large scale soil erosion is caused by running water and wind. Okay, we will see what exactly is happening, then we will plan how to stop this. Dumping of waste material, over irrigation. Okay, sometimes soil becomes salinity and it changes for the soil. Overgrazing by animals, the top layer will be removed. Okay, wastewater from industrial units pollute the lands. Mineral processing like grinding of limestone, after it is grinded, the dust that is present will settle on top of the ground and the fertility is completely gone. So all these are some of the factors that can cause land degradation. So now we can come across the terminology sustainable development. In simple words, sustainable development means we have to develop in the present and we have to assure that the development also takes place in the future for the future generation. It is not a very easy process. So now we come across Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, which was held where 100 heads of states met in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for the first International Earth Summit. The assembled leaders signed the declaration. So this is important what they did there. The leaders signed the declaration on global climatic changes and biological diversity. Okay, they also endorsed global forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development. It is the aims at achieving global sustainability. They also gave us the liberty that every place, every state, every country they can have their own Agenda 21. Whatever they made might not be suitable for every place. So they said each country can make their own agenda for sustainable development. So now soil as a resource, this particular picture shows you how the formation of soil takes place, how the parent rock gets weathered and is broken into bits and pieces, and over a period of time it becomes fine humus, black fertile layer of soil, but it takes millions of years to form a thin layer of humus. So basically this is a vertical section of soil. In this particular graph I have given you the places where different types of soils are present, like the alluvial soil, black soil, laterite soil, forest soil. All the soils are present here. And the map pointing for this particular chapter is very important. Each soil characteristics also have to be learned. For example, if you take alluvial soil, it is widely present important soil. As the name indicates, it is very fertile. The entire northern plains are made up of alluvial soil. They have been deposited by the three important Himalayan river systems, that is the Indus, the Ganges and the Brahmaputra. Okay, and you will also read in detail about the Khadar and Banjar, that means the old and the new alluvium. Also you are going to read about it. Now black soil, as the name indicates, it is black in color and it's also called Regur soil. Black soil is ideal for growing cotton. Okay, so basically few important points I am discussing here. Red and yellow soil are crystalline igneous rocks in areas of low rainfall in eastern and southern parts of Deccan Plateau. Laterite soil has basically it develops in areas with high temperature and heavy rainfall. Arid soils range from red to brown in color. They are generally sandy in texture and saline in nature. So now we can move on to soil erosion and conservation. Why is soil erosion taking place? What do you mean by soil erosion? The denudation of soil cover and subsequent washing down is described as soil erosion. The process of soil formation and erosion, they go simultaneously, because one place, if the soil is eroded, it is deposited in some other place. So washing away and depositing happen. That means soil erosion and soil formation can happen simultaneously. Okay, but the various reasons why soil erosion takes place is, as we all know, deforestation, overgrazing, construction, we are clearing sites to build buildings and all, and mining activities also, soil erosion can take place. Now we know what is meant by soil erosion. We know why land is getting degraded. Now we will figure out how this soil erosion can be stopped and how we can protect the land from getting degraded. We know deforestation is causing. Therefore, we have to encourage afforestation by creating awareness and undertaking various drives. Overgrazing is causing soil erosion. You have to control this. How then? What will the cattle eat? What we can do is we can develop pasture lands. We can follow special farming techniques like terrace farming and construction of shelter beds, so that the top soil cannot in uh, uh, sand, where places where sand dunes are present, top layers of soil do not get washed away. And terrace farming is mostly suited in hilly areas. Mining activities have to be strictly controlled and stringent laws have to be passed by the government. Industrial waste should be treated before it is let into the to the environment. Urban waste can be used for making biogas. Over irrigation should be stopped and other methods of irrigation should be followed. Okay, sometimes use of chemical fertilizers also causes land degradation. So therefore farmers have to be encouraged to use natural manures. Now let us go into different methods of soil conservation. There are various methods like contour plowing, terrace farming, strip cropping and shelter beds. Now let me take a highlighter. We are going into contour plowing. Plowing along the contours, okay, as I am showing here. Plowing along the contours, the contour lines, the curves can slow down the flow of water down the slopes. Okay, this is called contour plowing. Now if you come to terrace farming, okay, steps can be cut out on slopes making terraces. Terrace cultivation also reduces erosion. Western and central Himalayas have well developed terrace farming. Now large fields can also be divided into strips. Strips of grass or left to grow in between, or some other crop also can be grown in between, which is called the strip cultivation. There is also another method which is called creating shelter beds. Rows of big trees can be grown in between to break the flow of the wind. So in this way, we can see that soil conservation can take place and we can protect the soil from getting degraded. Okay. So basically with this, we have come to the end of the chapter. In this chapter, more of statistics are present and map work is very important. So go through the content given in the textbook and also practice the map. Thank you.